When you think of science fiction and fantasy, what do you picture? Your mind might go to Lord of the Rings, or Star Wars, or Harry Potter. These epics address issues of discrimination, marginalisation, and colonialism, but the characters in these stories are overwhelmingly white. Their plots and characters often serve as a metaphor for marginalised people, but end up excluding them altogether. Often omitted from traditional narratives about the future, Black people have created a world of their own through Afrofuturism. What does Afrofuturism even mean? Well, the term was coined in 1994 by Mark Derry, an author and culture critic. In an essay titled Black to the Future, he questioned, why do so few African Americans write science fiction, a genre whose close encounters with the other, the stranger in a strange land, would seem uniquely suited to the concerns of African American novelists? This led him to highlight the work of Black artists and writers who were exploring magical and impossible themes, whilst also incorporating their Blackness. His essay put the term Afrofuturism on the map, although members of the African diaspora have been exploring these themes for centuries.
In short, it's a way of looking at the future or alternate realities, but you're just doing so through Black cultural lenses. And it does so by intersecting imagination, liberation, mysticism, technology.
Author of the book Afrofuturism, Ytasha Womack is also a fiction writer and dance therapist.
I tell people that I was an Afrofuturist and didn't know I was an Afrofuturist. I grew up as a kid who was very excited about science and fantasy, and I was always encouraged to imagine and think about the future.
For Womack, Afrofuturism can be broken down into a few key categories.
It's an aesthetic that you can see in music and dance, but it could also be thought of as just a way of looking at the world, an epistemology possibly. And for some people, it's a process and a practice that helps them to really shape their creativity and push past hurdles.
That's the definition of Afrofuturism. But how would anyone recognize it?
Like, what's the Afrofuturism look? Is it Black Panther? Is it this? Is it that? But the truth of the matter, because people remixing is such a central part of African diaspora cultures, you see people pulling from all times and spaces.
So it can look very different depending on who's creating the art and story.
And then you have someone like a Sun Ra who takes the Egyptian tropes, the ancient Egyptian, not just imagery, but literally naming himself after an Egyptian god. And, but simultaneously says he's from Saturn, and that informs his music and his worldview. So there's, in certain eras, there's a lot of ancient Egypt and there's a lot of space imagery.
Afrofuturism shows up in art too. Artist Nick Cave, for instance, makes sound suits that can disguise the wearer's race and gender, hindering judgment from the audience. They have an out-of-this-world look, but are rooted in African traditional colour and materials. The Afrofuturist canon also includes the works of science fiction writer Octavia Butler. Her books include Kindred, about a time-travelling Black woman, and Parable of the Sower, set in a post-apocalyptic world. There's also singer and actress Janelle Monáe, who plays with the past and future to create a unique look and sound.
When she had more of the 50s aesthetic and the pompadour and the worker's uniform, but then at the same time, she's a cyborg.
Monáe is a regular at the Afropunk Festival, which celebrates alternative Black artists.
So Afropunk is a festival we absolutely consider to be an expression of Afrofuturism.
That's Alan Lamb, the brand lead for the festival.
The vision for the festival is really steeped in a lot of the elements of creativity that it's always represented. I think about science fiction, sci-fi, cosplay, which we're increasingly seeing at the festivals, art, fashion, and then of course at the center is always music.
The festival, which started in the Brooklyn parking lot in the early 2000s, now reaches 100,000 people a year, with events in Brazil, South Africa, and London. Its popularity could be partly attributed to the space and representation it provides for people who feel other.
You're going to find expressions of self and Blackness. You will find highly futuristic interpretations of Blackness through fashion. Between the music and the art, and just the connection of the diaspora, we found that it's a place to have expressions of love and of creativity.
Afrofuturism is clearly reaching new heights of popularity.
Once people kind of caught on to the term, it helped them to look at different works that existed that maybe they perceived as maybe more on the fringe or a margin.
The term and its art forms have made their way into the mainstream pop culture lexicon.
Black Panther, the film, surely, I think, demonstrated to a lot of people that there's an excitement about these, the Black speculative imagination and these really cool stories. There's a demand for them.
Afrofuturism is capturing viewers' attentions worldwide. From Lovecraft Country to Jordan Peele's genre-bending horror films and Octavia Butler's Kindred, now a streaming show. Afrofuturist artworks can be experienced firsthand too at some of the most iconic museums in the country. A Nick Cave retrospective is on display in the Guggenheim Museum until April of 2023. In 2021, the Metropolitan Museum of Art opened an immersive Afrofuturist period room, and Carnegie Hall presented an Afrofuturist music festival in 2022. Afrofuturism doesn't shy away from the past. In fact, it uses the experience of discrimination and subjugation that many Black people have faced to push forward. For instance, the Afrofuturist period room at the Met weaves in the history of Seneca Village, a flourishing Black community that was displaced in 1857 to make way for Central Park. One of the quotes written in Mark Derry's Black to the Future essay was one of George Orwell. "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." By looking backwards, Afrofuturists can imagine a future that is different from the past and present. A future that can be better.
It can be a little difficult to think about what's next or how to get to a next step, or how to get beyond the problem.
Imagination and dreaming are vital for hope and for lifting people out of hardship.
When people are reconciling with liberations, or they're dreaming freedom dreams or taking actions, they are propelled by a new future that they are creating through their actions.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up.
Thinking about the power of dreaming and imagination to create a new future, you could describe Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, Malcolm X, and other civil rights leaders as Afrofuturists.
Looking to the efforts and the work that people did to create new futures, and realizing that we're in that future, and that simultaneously we're part of a continuum where the actions and the decisions and the thoughts that we have now are creating new futures for others.